Welcome to Intelligent Think, the podcast in which we explore what makes ideas great, how we can make our thinking better, and why it's so important to share your ideas with the world. Plus, we'll talk to thought leaders and authors about their own ideas and experiences so you can mine them for gold nuggets that will help you on your journey. I'm Christina, and this is Intelligent Think. Now, I'm stoked today to be joined for this conversation by our incredible client and author, Jude Sclater. We helped Jude with some messaging for her website back in 2020, and she was one of the early pilot people in our Better Book project following that. So not only is Jude super lovely and super clever, she's also ex-Deloitte and used to be an information system auditor. Nowadays, she's an executive coach and trainer, as well as the author of the amazing and practical value-packed book, Think Like a Coach, Empower Your Team Through Everyday Conversations. While Jude's based in London, she works with clients all over the globe, and her Think Like a Coach methodology transforms first-time managers and technical experts into confident people leaders who can balance empathy with accountability for better team engagement and performance. So hello, Jude. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Oh, hi, Christina. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We've had lots of chats, but I'm excited to actually bring one to other people to be able to listen to as well. So I'm going to start, Jude, with obviously I know that you've long been helping to develop lots of technically brilliant people who struggle with the people management side of their roles, which, you know, I can pinpoint in my own memory, like so many of those that I've encountered. You were doing that work long before we started talking. So can you give us maybe a little bit of background as to how the idea of Think Like a Coach originally came about and what it was before you started thinking about a book?
So you mentioned in your intro, I started out life as a information systems auditor, and I did that for Deloitte in New Zealand for about 4.5 years. And then, you know, as Kiwis do, went on the big OE, came over to the UK, and actually came over without Deloitte. I was working for Pearson and Penguin Books for a while, but ended up back at Deloitte, but this time in learning and development. And it's something that I think I've always loved doing, always been really passionate about. In fact, I sort of went through a bit of a career crisis for a piece while I was at Penguin, because I was doing project management and I was in this company. It was all about books, and I loved books, and there were so many free books. It was just amazing. But I wasn't enjoying myself. And a friend of mine kind of, you know, I was telling her about it, and she's like, I don't know why you're wasting your time with this stuff. Why aren't you doing learning and development? Because you love it. And when I'd been at Deloitte previously, I used to train all the new joiners that came in around, you know, the different audit methodologies, and I used to mentor a lot of junior people. That sort of, you know, the way the firm is set up, and it's something that I used to really enjoy. So when I went back to Deloitte, even though I didn't have learning and development experience, because I'd been an auditor, their thinking was, well, we can teach you the rest. And it just so happened that not long after I joined, they were training another cohort of coaches. So Deloitte has a lot of internal coaches as in the firm. A lot of them tend to come from learning and HR, because, you know, we have the time and space within our roles to be able to do that. And the other thing that became quite a big part of my role was initially when people go through a big promotion process, so to senior manager, director, which are like 2 levels below partnership or owner level, they go through a process of promotion, and those that weren't successful the first time round, they would then come to me, and I would set them up with a coach. And after doing that for a year or so, I realized, well, actually, why aren't we doing a whole lot of stuff ahead of time to help people to prepare? And so I ended up developing out this whole program of helping people prepare for that big promotion step. And then if some weren't successful, then I would help them make sense of the feedback that they were getting. I would make sure that they were connected into the right kinds of training programs, make sure they had coaches, all of those kinds of things that they needed to enable them to be successful the next time. And so that was going great. coaching, doing all of that kind of work. But as inevitably happens, learning and development went through a restructure, and I'd been there for 8 years. So I decided really that it was time to go, and I took the opportunity of redundancy to set up my own business. And one of the external suppliers that I used to use quite a lot for personal impact and presentations training, she took me under her wing, and one of the first things she said to me was, you've got to write a book, you've got to write a book.
Oh, wow.
And I'd always thought I'd kind of want to, but I didn't know what I'd write a book about. And so I started a blog instead. And actually, I can't remember now if it was the 7th or the 9th one I wrote. A client had asked me to come in and do a lunch and learn on coaching skills. So COVID had just hit. And I remember sort of thinking, well, I want them to have something really, a practical skill that they can take away and they can actually use. Mm-hmm. And I did this sort of session, and I remember kind of flippantly saying to someone, well, coaching's just listening and asking questions. And so I sort of came up with this very beautifully titled 3 coaching skills you can use, yes. 3 coaching techniques you can use right now. And they were really about listening, asking someone to tell you more, so keeping them talking, and then summarizing. And then over the course of a sort of another year, I realized that I just had kept coming back to these topics. And so I was sort of thinking, yeah, maybe it is time to write a book. And I did a workshop on that sort of talked more about the, if you're thinking of writing a book, here are some things you need to know. Yes. And I pulled down all of my blog posts and things. I actually think I opened a document and tried to start to write something. Okay. It was really tough because, I was trying to start at the beginning. And then one day I get this email from you saying, hey, we're thinking about this book writing coaching program, and we wondered if you wanted to be in the pilot. And I think I talked to you. Yes. It was quite a while. I talked to you backwards and forwards. Yes. And then finally I was like, yeah, we're going to do this.
It's a big decision, and especially even with all the things that you knew you weren't starting from a blank page, because you had IP that you'd been playing with and you'd been testing your ideas and stuff already. But a book does feel like high stakes sometimes, right?
Yeah.
How did you? Obviously there was my friendly nudge because we'd worked together already, and I knew you had good things to say. But how did you sort of decide it was the right time, or what helped you to think now's a good point to take that plunge?
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of think back. I think it was something. I think because my friend Esther put that idea in my head, and as a kid, I remember my aunt gave me her old typewriter, a bit like the blue one you've got in the background there, and another aunt gave me that Tipex that you can use, the paper Tipex that you could put in. And I used to pretend to write stories and things all the time. And because I'd been writing the blog for quite a while by there, I like the process of writing. I like how it developed my ideas. And someone else, another good friend of mine had sort of talked about how when you're thinking about marketing, do the thing that feels the most natural and fun to you. And writing for me was one of those things. So I think it was more just lots of little things bubbled up and hit at the same time. I think a really big one, I've got a really good friend, T. Tyford over here, who's also a coach and has her own business. And I think one day I just said it out loud to her, and she kind of always held on to it, and she'd just really gently mention it from time to time. So I was kind of thinking about doing that course I told you about, and she's like, oh, just give it a go, like, see what will happen. So I don't know that it was one moment. I think it was just a lot of these little things. And I must admit, like, when you got in contact with me, that was quite a big vote of confidence as well, because I know you've been following me since we'd worked together,
Yes.
and we kept in contact a little bit, but to have someone who this is their business say, hey, I think you can write a book, and you're a bit like, oh, can I? I think it was just all this stuff just kind of collided and hit at the same time, and then it was like, right, well, let's do this.
Nice. And your blog came out, you were prolific with your blog. It was weekly, right? Is weekly. Yeah, I tried to find when I was writing the intro, Jude, for this. I was like, when did we start working together? And I'm going back in the emails. I had to go back through a lot of emails because I saved so many of your blog posts that come via email to me, because I know I want to refer back to things, and there's so many good techniques and stuff in there. So I know that there were lots and lots of emails. You were developing your thinking that way. How did then starting to write the book change the sort of thinking journey you were on, or how your ideas started to evolve? How much of, the Think Like a Coach framework did you have when we started, or how did it kind of develop as we went?
So the 3 coaching techniques you can use right now, which is now called the coaching 2-step. I suppose in essence that's always been there.
Yes.
It did change a bit. So I started with being a core sort of foundational step or part of that model, and I later changed that to attention. So there is a coach called Nancy Klein who I'm really influenced by. I love her thinking about things, and she has it's not a coaching technique, maybe a coaching model, or not quite sure of the right words around it, but she has something she calls the thinking environment, which is these 10 components, which if you, even just one of them helps, but if you can incorporate more of them, it's about creating an environment for someone else to do their absolute best thinking. And I really like the way she talked about attention, that attention is something around, for a lot of us, I used to ask this a lot, and I still ask this a lot in the workshops I run. When I ask someone, when was the last time you got to just finish a thought or talk out loud without being interrupted? Most people are like, oh, yes, a chance would be a fine thing. And I think especially if you're a parent,
yes,
as well.
Absolutely.
And then, I came across the thinking of another woman, Dr. Amishi Jia, who talks about, she's the author of Peak Mind, I think it is, and she talked about attention being like, she says flashlight because she's American, but for us a torch, and that that lot, when you're shining your torch at something, you can only shine it at one thing at a time, and everything else is kind of in the periphery. So I sort of playing with that idea a lot more, I realized that more than listening, because you can be typing away saying I'm listening, right, and you're not really present in there and listening to everything. So I wanted to use attention because I thought it conveyed more what I meant, that you need to stop what you're doing and give your attention, your best quality attention, to the other person, and that really helps with their thinking. And I suppose that's something that evolved as I was writing the blogs and as I was writing the book. Really sort of me saying to get to grips with, well, why is it attention and not listening? And I'm sure we must have talked about that in some of our coaching calls as well. And so, I could, and I suppose talking about how did my thinking evolve, I think the calls that we had really helped a lot, because I was coming and talking to you every week. I could kind of bring you where my thinking was now, and then we'd talk through all of that, and then it would kind of evolve. Yes. And then out I would go again and try and sort of do some more. So it felt very, everything felt quite malleable, not like that it was out of reach or slipping away, but just that nothing was quite set in stone. I could play with things sort of a bit like clay. It was like I was kind of molding it. I didn't always know what things would look like initially, but I suppose I had the confidence. What was nice, I had the support that it would turn into something, even if though I didn't know what it was at the moment.
Absolutely. And it's turned into something even more than the book. Like, I want to talk obviously a bit about the launch, but tell me first, Jude, about, now you've got this fully fledged service offering. So you've gone from this idea that maybe was just a blog to a book and to this fully fledged service offering. Tell me a bit about how that bit's happened.
So when I started out in business, I tried so many things to kind of try to niche, but I've never really niched properly. And I think a lot of coaches and trainers struggle with this because if I think about coaching, we can coach anybody. That's the beauty of coaching, that I don't need to be an expert in your life, your business, where you're working, your job, because where my expertise is in line with what Nancy Klein talks about, is I'm just creating this environment for you that will enable you to think and to come up with all of these ideas yourself. And so, having now written the book, I came off the back of it being really clear about what it is I now do. So I have I think like a coach, the foundation program, which is about learning the coaching 2-step and the principles of coaching. I do that in 2 parts because I feel that coaching is a skill that you can't just learn it off the bat. And in fact, that was one of the driving forces behind the book, is that one of the things I saw, and I saw this at Deloitte because I was the one who implemented the program, what organizations do is they recognize that coaching is such an important skill. It's great for managers and leaders, and then the way they try to teach it is by giving their managers this really super cut down version of the kind of training a professional coach does, and then we're surprised that they're not out there using it, because in the workshop they're loving it. It's great, look at these amazing results. But something like the GROW model, which is a very common coaching model, I would say every other coaching model is probably based on GROW, and I love that model, it's amazing. But if I think about professional coaches using that model, they have done countless hours of training before they've gone out and used it in real life. So someone who's just learned it in a half-day training, it's not enough to go out, and that's where I came up, really where this idea of the coaching 2-step came from, was I wanted something that people could have that was really easy to hold in their mind. And I use that dance methodology metaphor, because every dance has sort of that basic kind of foundational step. So whenever you get lost, you've always got somewhere to come back to. And so I like the program to be in 2 stages, because the first one is learning, and then go out and give it a practice, and then come back and we can talk about, right, where has it worked? Where have the challenges been? And then we can coach each other through those challenges and work out what will happen next. And I've just become so much clearer on that as a program and why I do it that way. And then actually, the other thing, which is not quite as related to the book, is going back to the program that I did at Deloitte, where I was supporting people through those promotion plateaus. I've now made that my other main offer. And so I think what the book has done is it's just helped me realize, with some clarity, these can be the 2 things that I'm out there offering in the world. Of course, the scary thing is then you think, well, am I cutting everybody out? And you're not. And I'm in a business mentoring group at the moment, and I keep telling people, you're not cutting people out by doing this. And I know, because I often market myself as someone who works with professional services firms. It's my background, it's the thing I know, and yet I'm getting inquiries from charities, from investment companies, like people that sort of are outside of that niche, but they see the core message of what I'm trying to do with managers, and they're like, oh yeah, I want a bit of that.
Yeah, because they still have the same challenge, don't they, in a slightly different environment, but they're still facing the same thing. Their people are. I often have heard that if it doesn't kind of hurt, if it doesn't fill you with FOMO, you haven't niched hard enough. And it's definitely something that we're experiencing now, because we're like, oh no, there's such a vast world to thought leadership, right? Are we really only going to focus on books? But we just we believe in them. So we're trying to, you got to stay the course for that. But it's not that people don't ask us about our other skill sets.
Yeah.
It's just what you got to put your energy into, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think too, what I'm hearing in your program ideas, and this will be strong in your L&D background too, is you've done something that gives people far greater immersion in your ideas than if they simply read the book, put it back on their shelf, and they've got another way to engage with it with the foundation program. But also, even the way that you've designed that program, there's way more stickability to what you're teaching them than if they just read, which I think is great. I remember a really important thing for you when you were writing this was that it was something that people could dive back into easily too, so that you're kind of creating it like a toolkit that sat on people's desks or easily within arm's reach, so that you kind of had not a script, but a basis to have particular kind of conversations. And you often know, I think, as a people manager, what some of the gnarly situations or the potentially gnarly situations are that are coming up. I've got a performance review, like an annual review with one of the team on Friday, for example, or even when you've just got a performance thing that you've got to talk about, or you can sense that someone's stuck or disengaged. You had really cool little pullbacks for people in the book about that.
Yeah, that was super important for me, and I think it supports the learning program really well. Many clients are buying the book to give to the participants because I think one of the things I said was I wanted it to be skimmable, and the reason for that was I wanted people. There's a book I have called Email Attraction by Kim Arnold, which I used as a model, and I know Kim as well. What I love about her book, I actually have it on my desk, and when I'm trying to write an email and I'm getting a bit stuck as to, maybe what my subject line is going to be or my hook or something like that, she's got examples of those in the book, and so I just pull it out and flick through it and find the section that I want, and then I use that and maybe I modify it, and that's what I wanted my book to be like. So on its own, you've got everything you need in there to be able to have a coach-like conversation with someone. In fact, you can just zero in on one chapter and pretty much have what you need, and then the rest of it is really about exactly what you're saying. I've got this conversation coming up. Let me just have a quick look at that chapter and review what some of the ideas were and see if there's something in there that I want to use. And that's also why I wanted the book to be really short and slim as well, so that it didn't feel like I've got to wade through all of this to find, so like putting the summaries in there and the question bank at the back and things like that, just stuff that will make it really easy, because managers are busy, they've got a lot on, and what they need is something really quick that's just going to say, right, remind me of what I need to do here.
Yes, the readability is great.
Yeah, exactly. And people mostly have really good instincts around this kind of thing. They just need something to get them started.
And I think sometimes the mindset, like I would find each time, I know it was meant to be me or us coaching you, but actually I took value and little tips or different ways, different lens to think about things that were happening in my team, or honestly even in my family. Like I think I got a more coach-like approach even to my parenting or talking to my husband or whatever than I maybe had before, just from engaging with your ideas as well. We're making it sound like, it was all la-di-da and amazing too. And we had this idea and off we went and ta-da. But I know that the process wasn't without challenges, because it never is, to be honest. So do you remember where the struggles were, and maybe some of the hard points, and equally what you might go back and what would you ideally have told yourself or had someone tell you back then, based on what you know now?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is there are days you're going to read it and hate it. And then there's another day you'll go back and read something and be like, oh, was that me? That's quite good. And that up and down happens quite a lot. And I think the two big things for me, probably the first one was I didn't properly set aside enough time. I didn't properly set aside time to work on the book, to write the book. So I think it was a few months in that I thought, actually, I can't just wait for inspiration to strike. And the thing is, I sort of did have time in my diary, but I wasn't really keeping to it, and I kept kind of ignoring it and things like that. So it's helpful having weekly coaching sessions, because you need something to bring along. I think it in some ways, I feel like had I been more deliberate about that time early on, I don't know if maybe the process would have gone faster. I don't know. Not that I'm unhappy with how long it took anyway, but I suppose that was one of my learnings.
It's funny too, because I think some of us process in different ways, and I've noticed now, having done the program with more people, some are really ready to just fingers to keys straight away, let's knock this out. And I know from my own experience writing my own book, but actually even writing clients' books, how non-linear the writing is across a project. So I've finished one recently that I was ghostwriting. I would have talked to the guy frequently too, like weekly, sometimes fortnightly, but lots of the time weekly, so plenty of times a month, for maybe 3 or 4 months before I actually started writing anything down, because I just felt like I needed to get all the threads and understand the story in the bigger picture first. So if I recall, you were doing quite a lot of research and other reading and really sort of fleshing out. But then when you started writing, you were away, because you'd taken that time. You didn't have quite so many blocks, if I recall. The odd, like, little inevitable tangle that we had to unwind, but not the really big, like, oh, I just don't know now, blocks, because you'd done lots of the thought up front.
Yeah. And actually, one of the reasons I chose your program over another one I was looking at was that it was a longer program over a longer period of time, and theirs was over a shorter one. And I just felt, it was kind of like, write your book in 12 weeks. And I'm like, oh, absolutely no. I have no idea. And I'm sure actually, I know it's possible. And I'm sure, of course, that, they would have let the time. And I think I did ask them about that. But they said, of course, if it's not, different points aren't ready, we'll give you time, not forever, but
yes,
you'll get that space. But that was sort of their structure. And what I really liked about your structure was it felt a bit more spacious, and that's what I needed at the time was that space. So yeah, I trying to remember what I was actually doing in those bits before I really got in, and I think it was more that I was just waiting for inspiration to strike, or I was just a little inconsistent with when I would sit down. And then when I became more consistent, then things, I wouldn't even say that they sped up. I think it's just, things started to become clear as to what it was that I needed to do. Whereas before that, I think I just still felt things were a little murky.
Understand. Are there any other struggles that stand out, Jude?
I suppose the other one is the practical one of, when your book launches.
Yeah, talk a bit more about that, because I skipped my question that I wanted to do about launch time. It's been out just over a year. It was March last year, and we're in March having this conversation, even though people might not be listening to it in March. So yeah, tell us a bit about the highs and lows of launching.
So I did a launch party. It was amazing. I had a great time. Like, to have a room full of people that just really love you and want to support you, it just feels phenomenal. And I did I showed people the coaching 2-step, and I got them to do a really short practice sort of trial of it. And for me, doing that in a room of really my friends and my family, who many of whom would not have seen me facilitate before, that was quite buzz. So that was really cool. I suppose the next sort of bit is the down from that, which is that, you know, as many times as people tell you that you have to promote your own book, and you're going to have to promote it a lot, you really don't understand what that means until you absolutely have to do it. And, you know, thinking about going back, what's something I might have done differently? You know, there's a lot of talking about building your list and building your audience. And what I felt was missing was, well, practically, how do I go about doing that? So the blog's going out every week. I might get a new subscriber every month or so, even though I was posting about it on LinkedIn all the time and things like that. And LinkedIn really is, I suppose, my social media focus, because that's where a lot of my clients would hang out. And it wasn't really until I met with another author that I got introduced to, because I was sort of struggling with how do I promote my book more. And I told her all the things I was doing, and she said, look, you're doing all the right things. She's like, the only difference between the two of us is that you've got 1,600 connections on LinkedIn and I've got 20,000.
Yeah, the volume.
Yeah, and she's like, look, whether you like it or not, you just have to max those LinkedIn connections every week. And, you know, you don't have to, you can send messages to them or not. It's kind of up to you. It's something that I've resisted a lot because I felt was really icky and it wasn't very personable. But as she pointed out, and as others have said to me, you're in business and you need to sell, and you can't sell if people don't know who you are. Right? No one can buy if they don't know who you are. So I've sort of gotten over myself on that. And in the last probably 5 months, I've now got over 3,000 connections on LinkedIn. Yeah. And, you know, the really cool thing is people know me and they're seeing the book. So actually I put out a post recently, and someone I did a collaboration with who wrote about the Think Like a Coach ideas and how they relate to having better meetings, because that's her focus. But she posted a picture of her little girl with the book, and you know, her little girl's taken a real shine to it and carries it around everywhere, and you know, pretends to read to like her teddies and dolls and things. And that's the kind of stuff I'm now starting to see in the kind of messages and things that I'm getting. And it is amazing. And it, you know, it can be a bit of a slow burn. And I think we've talked about this, and I know other authors have said as well, you know, it's not about launch day. It's about the longevity, and your book has a long life to it. So you need to make sure people know about it and you're keeping it up. So, for example, if I have a conversation with a new client, you know, one of the first things I do is I offer to send them a copy of the book, so they've got it. And then there's the sort of little things. My publishers have an author community, and they sort of bring us together every couple of months around different topics. And so promotion was one of those topics. And one of the big tips I picked up from there was, anytime you see somebody say something nice about your book, you know, thank them, and then a quick line to say that would make a great Amazon review. And that alone has got me up to 22 reviews on Amazon. And those are the kinds of things that really make a difference. I suppose other things that I didn't find out about anyway, or I didn't know early on, but now I know. It's not like it's too late. You know, best time would have been to have started when I was writing the book. The second best time is today. So I just kind of just got in, right, and got it going.
It's hard when you're deep in the writing, I think, to hold the, you know, even with full understanding of how much of that momentum I needed, it was still like, but I'm so deep in the ideas and the you know, I'm up to my elbows in the work of actually writing it. I don't want to do that at the same time.
And also you're delivering.
It's okay, it's slow, but you can definitely supercharge that organic growth by being a bit proactive.
Yeah, and you know, if you hit, and some people do have big platforms, or you know, they're on the speakers circuit. There's kind of other stuff that they're doing, so they're able to build that up. And I suppose where I was, even though I'd been into my business a few years, I wouldn't say I had a massive audience out there. So I always knew that the book was not about making any money directly from the sale of the book. It was about really getting my ideas together and working out something that I could offer in the market that would be valuable. And so the book is leading to sales of the program, and it's also leading to me being seen as an expert in this area, and someone that, you know, has some really good ideas and is worth talking to. And it's definitely a lot easier to do when you've got the book. I was talking to someone the other week when I was first talking about sort of pricing for the program, and she was just like, well, if you want to start with that, fine, but you need to start increasing your prices because you have literally written the book on it.
Wow, yes, exactly. It's sort of just this premium positioner straight away. And I think, you know, we put there's a lot riding for us on that launch time. But actually, I've noticed how irrelevant it is for other people out there, actually, whether your book was just launched last week or whether it was launched last year. It doesn't actually matter for them engaging with the ideas. I think the challenge for us as the authors is that we've got to sometimes slow ourselves down and stay back there. Like, we're almost like, like old news now, we all know that, but actually other people are always being introduced to your thinking, and they don't always know. There's a tendency to like take off and sort of what's next it all the time.
Yeah,
you do evolve it, but you've got to remember that there are people who are still picking it up at this point too, and you've got to be able to talk to them as well. What's your strategy now, Jude, for I guess not just the book, but the Think Like a Coach sort of methodology and promoting these bigger ideas? What's the plan now that you've got the program and you're a year on from launch, and are there new objectives for you?
At the moment, the focus is still spreading the word and making sure as many people as possible know about the book and the ideas in the book. I suppose one of the things that one of the big pieces of advice out there is, you know, the money is in your mailing list. And that's something that I've started thinking a bit more about. So before, the blog was me just writing about whatever I wanted to write about that week, which is a bit of pressure as well, trying to keep coming up with these topics, and I was always a bit behind. And then the book kind of let me breathe a little bit, because I've got a whole book of topics now. I can just repurpose them. And where I've come to in the last couple of months is, what I want is for that newsletter or blog or whatever you want to call it, what I want it to be known for is, you get this, and every week you're getting a really practical tip that will help you be the manager that you want to be that empathetic manager who can lead with empathy, can really empower their teams. Because I don't think bad managers are bad people. I think they just often don't know any better. And I know in the UK, for example, there was a study done a couple of years ago by the Chartered Management Institute, and they found 82% of new managers in the UK received little to no training. And then even when you went up to mid-level managers and senior managers, the amount of training was still under sort of 35%. There's not a lot of training that's going on, and especially with my background working with people that are quite technical in nature, that step up to being a manager is like a career change.
Yes.
And you know, it's something I used to hear quite a lot. People feel like they had the rug pulled out from under them, because all of a sudden there's all these people things they had to deal with. The people were looking at them for stuff, and you know, it's quite easy as a manager to try and go back to the thing, you know, which was the job that you were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
But now actually you're supposed to be managing someone to do the job that maybe you had been doing.
It's a very different skill set, isn't it?
Yeah, and so that's really the strategy, is to get that newsletter to a place where I've got a really good community of managers in there who believe in the ideas. They're getting something, really valuable from that, things that will help them be a really awesome manager, because, the ripple effect of management is so huge. And you've got Gallup, who do their annual workforce surveys every year, and they're saying that employee engagement, 70% of that is down to the manager.
Wow.
And so that is a lot for a manager, and it makes sense, right? Because they're the one giving you the work.
Yeah, and we don't leave jobs, do we? We leave bosses often.
Exactly.
So same theory.
And it's a lot to put on someone that the engagement and the performance of the people within the firm is based on you.
Yeah.
And yet not give them any support for that. So I want to create this, again, a resource that people are getting every week, something that L&D and HR managers can say, hey, why don't you sign up to this? Or, they might be signed up to themselves because they too are also managers, but it might give them a few tools that they can use with the people in their organisations, because L&D budgets often get a bit squeezed. It'd be great to bring in all of this training and do all these things, but it's not always necessary. So I really want to build up this place of, I need to have this conversation, or I want to be able to manage my people in this way, and have a place that someone can go and go, right, I know I'll find something here that's going to be helpful. And I add into there, things around also helping coach yourself as well, because you need to, as the old adage is, you've got to put on the oxygen mask first. And managers are under lots of stress and strain. There's lots of things they're trying to attend to, and if you're not in a good place yourself, then it's really hard to be developing and supporting the people around you.
And if you are the leader too, there's not often someone above you. Certainly there is in those big kind of corporate environments, but someone who's running a smaller business, for example, no one's giving you that same sort of coaching and encouragement and the curious questions and the attention, the creating of that thinking environment for yourself is really important. I think this certainly sounds to me like the spirit that you're bringing to what you want the email, blog, newsletter to be is actually quite similar to what you wanted for this too. And that is that you're giving people this really empowering resource library that they can reference as they go about their it's a realistic resource library too, always with you. I've noticed that you're really good at that balance of, we're not going to bog people down with too much of the the detail or they don't need to become scholars in this thing. They actually just need what they need to be able to perform at their best. And that's like, I just love that practical value. Is there anything, Jude, that I haven't asked you that you'd like to be able to tell, the thinkers and stuff who are listening to us today?
I think as a final word, what I'd add, so there's a book out there by Michael Bungay-Stanier called The Coaching Habit, which I love. It's brilliant. It is written specifically for managers. It's great, and it almost stopped me writing my book.
Oh, wow.
Because I thought it was so good. And I'm sure you've said this to me. I can't remember where I heard this initially, but people need to hear your voice, because the way that you say something is different to the way someone else is saying something. And as much as I love Michael's work and I love his book, and I actually think my book would be a perfect companion for his book,
I do
it might not resonate with some people, whereas the way I've written and the way I've put things might resonate with somebody more. And so really this is something that kind of came up with someone I was talking to recently who had kind of felt like they'd started writing something and then another book came out that was basically their book, and now they feel like they can't write theirs. And my advice was actually, no, like just go ahead and write your thing. Of course, the idea might evolve and, you might want to look at things a different way, but your voice is much more important than you might think, because there is someone who needs to hear it the way you said it.
Absolutely. I love that and totally agree. I spend a lot of time saying the same sort of thing. You mentioned, Jude, when we talked before, that at least for now, the first chapter of your book, people can get for a free download. Can you tell them where they head to access that?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think the easiest way. So the URL, if you go to thinkwithjude.com/sign me up, or the easiest way probably to find it is if you go on to thinkwithjude.com and onto the blog page, there's a link there that will enable you to sign up to the newsletter, and then you'll get a download of the first chapter for free.
Awesome. And is there anywhere else that people should have a look at if they want to connect with you or learn more about your ideas and the work that you're doing? Obviously, your website's a great place to start, but where else?
Absolutely, LinkedIn. Come along and hit connect as well. I'm always trying to get those connections up. I post on LinkedIn pretty much every day, and what I often do is take ideas from the blog and I repurpose those into shorter posts on LinkedIn. So you'll get a really good sense of some of the ideas by following me through there. And I just really like, if you're interested in these things, I like interacting with people and talking to people about this, and also others, that are thinking about writing a book and how to get their ideas out there. I firmly believe writing a book is not a solo sport, it's a team sport, and really happy to give some advice and cheer someone on.
Agree. Thank you. I will put all the links that Jude's shared in the notes underneath this episode as well. So thank you, Jude, firstly, and thank you everyone who has been listening along today. You've been listening to Intelligent Think with myself and Verity Craft, brought to you by Intelligent Inc. So thanks to Jude and to you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends, and give us a review. Here's to better thinking together.